With the war now in motion, college football was suffering through a lack of on-field talent. The country found itself sending more and more of its young men to protect our great nation. But it turned out that another age group was ready to fill in the void. High school football not only picked up the slack during the war, but it also found itself gaining a new home in the Orange Bowl Stadium. Over 30 high school games a year were played from 1940 to 1945. As the war pressed on, so did the popularity of the annual game from the stadium. In 1944, the Orange Bowl game was selected by the armed forces to be transmitted via shortwave all over the world for our troops in the field. By the war's end, new bleachers were added to the end zones to increase the stadium's capacity to 37,000. Miami's popularity exploded after the war, and many soldiers who had trained down here were now moving in and calling it their home. Growth was everywhere, and the Orange Bowl grew right along with the city of Miami. In 1950, 7,500 seats were added to the stadium, made possible through the sale of $50 bonds, with the buyers getting priority on choice tickets for the upcoming Orange Bowl game. $500,000 was raised, and the stadium found itself growing once again to accommodate the ever-expanding city around it.
The next 5 to 6 years, the Orange Bowl was added to where it is now, where there's 75,000 fans. It used to be just the 2 bowl ends, then it got the end zone, and then they put a top deck on it. So it's come a long way in the last 75 years.
Technology was now catching up with the popularity of the Orange Bowl parade and game, as both were viewed by a nationwide audience in 1953. It was the first live TV origination from Miami and paved the way for the signing of TV packs in future years. The next year found the stadium growing once again after a 2-year pact was signed with the Atlantic Coast Conference and the Big Seven. 3,000 more seats were added to the stadium, increasing its seating capacity to 68,500. The growth was now unstoppable, as when in 1955, CBS signed a deal to televise the game for the next 3 years, and an additional 8,000 seats were added. Miami was now a serious football city, and it took its high school games just as seriously.
But of course, the famous football games when I was in high school, it's hard for people to imagine today the absolute thrill of having high school games in the Orange Bowl Stadium. I mean, my high school, I went to Miami Edison, and that's the only place we ever played in Miami. We were a home game, we were at the Orange Bowl, and of course the Miami High game was legendary on Thanksgiving night. They'd have 40,000 people in the Orange Bowl. And it was kind of divided up between the North and the South. The Edison people were on the North stand and the Miami High people were on the South stand.
It was a sold-out game every Thanksgiving morning. Everybody came back from their various universities, ties and coats. They'd gone to church at 8, 9 o'clock, came to the ball game with their girlfriends, and then they went home victorious or sullen. But they all met, both sides, because we all lived pretty close together from Red Road over to 67th Avenue. And they had a great time. And then that night, we would all go back, most of the coaches would go back and watch Miami High and play Edison in the Orange Bowl.
Those were times when people looked forward to a Thursday or Friday night high school game and a Saturday night University of Miami game. And the crowds were always impressive and very vocal. I mean, they cheered as much for high school as others cheered for college.
By the end of the 50s, the Burdine Stadium had grown a second tier of seating. The stadium, which had once seated 23,000, had now grown to 76,500 in a mere 20-year span.
This new upper deck swayed in the wind. and everybody got a little nervous because we'd never had anything like that before in Miami.